usually do a snappy little social media post after every Liverpool game just to kind of sum up what I've seen tactically or an interesting performance from the game or what it means in the long term. But I have to admit, I didn't actually do one today because I really struggled to put into context how little this game actually meant to Liverpool. Of course, a 3-1 defeat for them at Chelsea today. But if you want a snappy summary of what that game really meant to Liverpool, I think it came in the fact that the supporters, just after it goes to 3-1 and effectively the result is sealed by Cole Palmer's penalty, you look to the away end and the Liverpool supporters were just going bonkers in there, jumping up and down, singing songs and basically drowning out the whole stadium. So that is what this game kind of meant to them, really. And I think, it didn't really matter for Liverpool, did it? There's just no getting away from that. Nobody should be too disappointed by this result because ultimately they've been in party mode since the title was sealed with that win against Tottenham on Sunday. And they came into this, having probably had a few drinks the back end of last week, into maybe the start of this week. And of course, then the manager makes 6 changes to kind of reward his fringe players, and so you're going to get a slightly disjointed performance. Liverpool not fully committed, not diving into every challenge as they would in a game where there was something on the line. And that was particularly stark as well because for Chelsea this game meant an awful lot. I mean, for starters, they're playing at home against the champions. They've just had to give Liverpool, who they don't like very much, a guard of honour, but also of course they are vying for Champions League football at the moment. They desperately need to get into that top 5 from a financial perspective, don't they? So they really needed to get a result here because they've got a few tough fixtures left as well. So real contrast in what it meant to both sides. And I think that was something that you reflected at full time in terms of the way that the fans greeted the full-time result. But of course, as much as there was that difference really in terms of how much it meant, I actually don't think you saw a massive gap on the pitch really, or Chelsea stomping all over Liverpool because they really needed the result or anything like that really. I mean, you look at the numbers from the game and 17 shots to 11 in Chelsea's favour, 2.91 expected goals to 1.17. But I have to say, it didn't feel like that kind of game. I think Chelsea pile on quite a little bit of XG towards the end because they obviously get the penalty, they have a couple of late breaks. But it was fairly even throughout the game, I felt. And I thought, Liverpool probably could have had a better XG tally if they'd have just made the most of getting into some dangerous areas at times. They played through Chelsea and then got in the final moment, and it just didn't work for them. And I think the fact that they were actually dominant in some aspects is shown in the fact that they had 65% possession to Chelsea's 35%. That wasn't the game plan for Chelsea. And yet Liverpool were dominant in that aspect, but they didn't make it pay. And of course, in the end, I think a deserved 3-1 defeat, but it probably tighter than the scoreline shows and not utterly terrible from Liverpool. But the main takeaway, I guess, is kind of from Liverpool a bit of a shrug of the shoulders and a bit of a so what, because this is not a game that mattered. They are the Premier League champions, and that's why at the end you see the fans going crazy. You see Ibu Konate celebrating with them, despite the fact that Liverpool have just lost, because it's not a game that had a lot riding on it for Liverpool, and they're just going to use these games coming up, really, aren't they, to celebrate the incredible season they've had and the fact that they are Premier League champions. That said, of course, the fact that it isn't important for most of the Liverpool squad, definitely not important for the fans this game. I do think there was a few fringe players for whom this game had an element of importance, really, because Slot had said ahead of this game, didn't he, that he was going to make changes. He wanted to reward some players who maybe haven't featured as much this season as they would maybe deserve. And so those players were coming in with a real point to prove, and they wanted to come into this one and say, look, you should have played me more, and show to the fans that they are good enough, and they should have been in the team more frequently. And I guess chief among them really is Harvey Elliott. I mean, I spoke about him in the press conference video, really, and talking about the fact that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him. I do really rate him as a player, and I feel he's been a bit unfortunate this season. But you have to say, in terms of grabbing his opportunity coming into the starting 11 today, that didn't really happen, did it? I thought a poor performance from him, really. You're not going to get huge numbers on the defensive aspect. He's not that sort of player. So 1 out of 2 ground duels won, 0 tackles completed is not a huge shock, and not what you put him in the team for. But what you do put him in there for is that others might cover him off defensively, but he has to give you something in possession and really show what he's all about there. And unfortunately, I didn't feel that he did that. I mean, he ends up the game with 0 chances created, which for a player of his quality is really disappointing. And only 2 shots as well, both of which were blocked and both from real distance as well. So, not a performance where he's really grasped the nettle and showed the manager that he had deserved more throughout this season. And it's interesting because there are those doubts over his future at the moment. Clubs are interested, they're circling. If they get any indication that Liverpool will sell, I'm sure that bids will fly in for him. He has said himself recently he wants to stay, he supports Liverpool, he wants to make it work at this club. But he obviously has to do a little bit more when he comes into the starting 11. And you kind of look at his numbers from the season and they are quite impressive. And you think, God, if this guy was on the pitch more frequently, surely he deserves to be. But I do think there's an element of kind of game state affecting that. And the fact he is coming into games when it's late in the day and maybe he's had more opportunities in space to work, or Liverpool are really piling on the pressure. And that's been a key thing in kind of lifting his numbers a little, because sometimes, and there've been a few times this season where he's come in for 90 minutes or come in to start at least, and he just hasn't grasped it, as I say. And I think this was another one that kind of passed him by, and I'm sure he'll be really disappointed with the way he played. I certainly was, because I know there's a better player than what we saw today in there, so that was really unfortunate that didn't work out for him. And I have kind of similar feelings as well actually about ELLIOTT QUANSAH. Obviously, I actually don't think he was kind of disastrous in this game. I thought he was doing okay until kind of just as the second half started to tick on, you saw some mistakes start to creep in. He dives into a challenge that gets him a booking because he loses the ball, and that's frustration. And then moments after that, he concedes the own goal, which I will say absolutely nothing to do with him really. That one, if your teammate blasts the ball off you, it's really unfortunate. But I think that again, it kind of hurt his mentality and where he was. And then the remainder of the game, he looked a little bit uncertain, and then of course culminates in him giving the penalty away with a really clumsy challenge. Again, not entirely his fault, I don't think. It's a really terrible pass into him, but still, he's at the scene of the crime there, isn't he? And it's not a great performance overall, because 1 out of 3 ground duels won, 1 out of 3 aerial duels won, so they're not incredible numbers. And I think just adds up really. It's been a tough season for him, hasn't it? He's found it hard. He gets dragged off against Ipswich, never really recovers from that. He's had some decent performances in there, but not at the level that we saw last season, so it's been really tough. And again, similarly to Harvey Elliott, there are some doubts over his future. There are clubs that are interested in him. Does he want to stay and fight for his place? Would he be frustrated with the idea that he's going to be, if Liverpool sign Dean Hoyce and they keep Canate, it looks like he's going to be 4th choice there. Does he want that? Does he want to stick around and try and prove that he's worth more starts in the future? It's going to be interesting to see. But again, similarly to Elliott, another young player, he's only 22, but he didn't do himself any massive favours really with his performance today, I thought. And again, he'll come away from that one and be a little bit disappointed that he didn't show more. But just to pick up now and go towards a positive, and there should be positives in this one, as I say, don't want to be too harsh on those 2 young players, because this game didn't matter, and I don't think everyone was running at their absolute best, so you don't want to be too harsh. But there is a real positive in there as well, one who I thought performed magnificently today actually, and that is Wataru Endo. Now he comes in, of course, similarly to those 2. He's not had a lot of minutes this season. People have maybe been feeling that he should have had more, and I think today he showed that is actually the case. He did deserve to maybe play more. I mean, we know he is great in the defensive aspects of the game. 4 out of 5 ground duels won, 2 out of 3 tackles. But I thought on the ball he was fantastic. You think of that as a real weakness for him, and the reason he maybe doesn't get into Slot's team. And yet I thought he was impressive in possession today, and showed that he isn't just that kind of clogger that people think he is. He isn't just someone who runs around kicking people. He is a capable footballer, which is why he was a starter for a team that challenged for the title last season and won a trophy. He is a good footballer, and better than maybe even Slot gives him credit for, because 93% of his passes completed, 4 into the final third. And I thought, some of them really punching them through the lines, showing real comfort in tough situations when he's getting pressed. All the things that people think are weaknesses for him, I actually thought he did quite well in. And actually on the defensive aspect as well, that block he puts in on Madueke just in the build-up to the Quansah goal is unbelievable, by the way. So I thought a really good performance from him overall, and he's a phenomenal backup to have in your squad. Brilliant professional, great guy, and a great footballer as well. And it's unfortunate he hasn't played more, and it's going to be interesting coming into this summer now. Is he happy to stick around and have that role? I don't think he will be, unfortunately. But it would have been nice if he could stick around, because what a reliable member of the squad to have about, and as I say, a great professional as well, who really sets the standards in training. So if Liverpool can keep hold of him, that would be a real boost, but I suspect he's going to want to move on and maybe play it a little more next season. And he showed that there should be a lot of interest in him, because he's a very, very good footballer. So yeah, I guess in summary there, really not a day to remember for Liverpool, but of course you've got to come back to the feeling of kind of who cares about it, really. It's not one that anybody in the squad should be dwelling on, or any supporters. I think look, over the remainder of this season, there are goals for Liverpool to focus on. I think they will go back to a full-strength team against Arsenal. They'll want to show you're the second-best team. We want to kind of take you apart on our own turf and show that there is a gap between those sides. So I think we will go back to full strength for that one. Salah is still chasing that assist record. Only got 3 games now to get 3 assists. It's looking really tight and difficult. Can he even get 2 to equal the record? Let's hope so. But as I say, running out of time to do that. And of course, Liverpool do have another record up for grabs as well, which is that they've scored in every away game this season now. That is coming up for them. So if they score at Brighton, that will be the first time in Liverpool's history that has ever happened, that the team has scored in every away game in a season. So, a chance to make history in that aspect. And actually, one quick note as well, that's a 4th set-piece goal in 4 games, so that improvement we're really seeing. And I mentioned that in a couple of videos ago in something I want to see over the remainder of the season. So that is a real improvement we're seeing. So again, hope that's a goal for Liverpool to keep that up over the remainder of the season. But ultimately, these are just 3 games that are 3 more parties, 3 more opportunities for supporters to hail the champions and really celebrate this incredible season, which is what it's been. So maybe don't think about this result and any poor results that come in the next few games too much. They're very easy to move on from, I would think. So anyway, do let me know your thoughts in the comments on that game. How did you think the fringe players got on? Who was your man of the match? Who did well from a Liverpool perspective? Do let me know. Always interested to hear your thoughts. And if you can give me a like, that's always fantastic. And a subscribe as well, because we're now on 31,000. I was talking about 30,000. We've smashed past that. We're on 31,000. We're aiming for 40 now. Let's try and get there as soon as possible. But thank you very much to everyone who's joined the channel now and everyone who's subscribed for a long time. Massively appreciate that. So I'm going to wrap it up there and say I'll see you guys very soon.